So welcome back everyone, we're starting now. So we just need to note Councillor O'Leary and Councillor McPherson have now left the meeting. Councillor Gallagher looks like he's still here.
He is here.
He's coming, thank you, here he is. And Councillor Wilson informs me that he needs to leave by 8 o'clock. Correct?
Got a note from my mother, Your Worship.
A note from your mother. Right.
I need to leave by 8:15 as well.
Do you have a note from your mother, Councillor?
My mother's passed.
Right.
But that's okay. Good memories.
Right. I think the message was Councillor Wilson and I were just engaging in a little light banter about the need to stay till the end. So, councillors, given that by 7:45, 2 more of your colleagues will be leaving. Councillor Truman says we will be finished.
Although we've spent 4.5 hours debating just one subject,
Quite.
Your Worship.
Right. Yes, I think you're all with me.
Let's gird
Right.
our loins.
So now we're going to embark, councillors, on a series of very, very exciting and in-depth business cases on infrastructure.
I'll move.
And they...
Second.
Yes. Yes, I did say to our Waikato Times reporter, Aaron, that I don't expect there'll be a huge amount of debate on these, but anyway, we do need to work through them. So the first one is item 6, page 18. And Chris, I think you can take it that we have...
Understood it.
We've read them. And is there just anything in particular that you wanted to highlight for us on that one?
No, just to say quickly, I guess that this project just supports our ongoing development of the Road to Tuna Growth Cell. In particular, this is a really important one for the school precinct and the development and supporting the ongoing growth of the school out there.
Right. So,
I'll move, Your
so
Worship.
I do have a question, if I may, before we go to that, and that is on page 38, and it does reference the map. If we look at page 24, and thanks for the maps, I found them very useful. I just want to get from you, this is a build of a part of a road, this business case, and the Borman Road extension from Hector to Horsham Downs Road is, you sort of covered it off there. Just explain to me, we're building a bit of a road to join up with another road that a developer's building, but what's the rationale for holding off and not going all the way through?
It was just the sequencing and timing and the 10-year plan and our fitting in with our funding capability. So we put it into 2 sections. The first section was designed to support the school. So it goes, if you look at the map, it just goes past that collector road. So that's the road that we needed to support the school. The second one, I think, comes in about, from memory, year 7, right. To fit our the financial strategy. And it's very much about completing the network and getting rid of some of the rat runs through Moonlight Drive and other important local roads.
So just in terms of the comments you've made there, that you are making an assessment there that in the perfect world you would do the whole thing, but you don't see any real negative consequences by only doing the partial build. I guess I'm wanting to know, are we losing out in any way by not doing the whole road that we should be made aware of?
We're not losing out in terms of development activity, but we are losing out in just getting the right connectivity and putting the right people on the right roads. So the downside is that traffic will still be using Moonlight Drive for a while, so until we can complete that road. So it would be very nice to do it as a continuous arrangement, but that's just the
it's not being a barrier, not being a barrier to economic activity and to support the community and development out there.
That would be my view. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's good. Do you have a question, Councillor Mallett?
Yeah, and I won't go through the ones we were texting for 3 hours last night on. So page 87. Just a general question, and this is applicable to all of the business cases we're getting today.
Yeah.
Have DCs been collected for these?
So all of these projects will be in our 10-year plan, and we will collect DCs as development happens on these roads, yes.
So just at the Finance Committee, I raised a question about the possibility that we are, the truism that we collect DCs across the life of a project, before it's built, but it's in the plan, whilst it's being built, and after it's been built, to pay it back. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And the issue for me was, and some other people, was that we don't record DCs that are received ahead of the work being done. So we receive cash, but we haven't paid anyone to do any work yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm not trying to catch anyone out, but my concern, and a few of us have got concerns, is how much has been captured, how much money has been collected from people, which we show as a revenue, i.e. a good thing, but we in our accounting policy at the moment is currently not to include that as a liability.
So I'm looking to the finance CFO here. Thanks, Paul.
As was noted in the email that I sent out, there was $3.3 million worth of contingent liability where we may have an obligation.
Have you seen? Sorry, I
Yes, an email. We've all received it.
Oh, I didn't. Okay.
So there's $3.3 million that is associated with the contingent liability that we may have to repay if certain projects were not to proceed. There is approximately $40 million that has been reduced our debt over time. That is against projects that are either in work in progress or projects that are in the 10-year plan that are still to happen. So, yes,
Okay, so
simple answer is yes, we do that over the lifetime of those projects, from when they're being planned through to when they're done, until all the sections that are associated with
okay.
that.
So the 3.3, that's just shown as credit development levies, debit cash in the bank.
It's also disclosed as a contingent
Oh,
liability.
it is it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. I won't ask you that commercially viable question.
While you're looking, Councillor Mallett, I do have...
Sorry,
I've got another question while you're looking.
Okay, no.
I just want to check, just in terms of our capital expenditure program, where we sometimes have deferred projects into a next year, most of these, well, all these business cases are over a period of time, many years, some of them quite long. This particular one I'm looking at, on page 20, it's identified which is the breakdown. I just want to be clear that each amount of funding parcel is allocated in its respective year. So if you come to us and say, well, that project isn't started and needs to be deferred, and you know how we're working actively to have very few of those, that only relates to the portion in that year, doesn't it? You don't say it's on the capital program for this year because that's when we start it, even though it might go over successive years. I just want to get clear on that. I'm going to the CFO, he's going to help.
Yes, correct, Your Worship. Each year we assess the deferrals, and that may be for part of a project. So we had an example last year where we had a project that was over multiple years, including the current year, and we actually deferred some of that once we had the business case.
Yes, and it's only the portion that relates to that year.
That's right.
Yes, and that's how we manage it in the CapEx, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah, good. I just wanted to check that. That's great. Thank you. Councillor Mallett, you had a...
This is a very simple one, page 27. The bottom, you've got, at the very bottom of that page, you've got 4 bullet points. The second bullet point, the sentence isn't finished.
And ensuring.
Yep, sorry, apologies for that. So,
Someone does read these things.
yeah, I know that from the text last night.
And this one here, page 28, this is going to offend a few people. And we look at our stakeholders. We have adjacent landowners, local community, local developers, service utility providers, and for all of those things, we keep them informed. Local iwi, we keep them satisfied. Why do we do that? What's the difference?
Perhaps it's terminology, really.
Well, words mean something.
They do.
And that's listen to this one, guys. That's ubiquitous through these processes.
Good.
You'll see this ubiquitous, frequently occurring. Yeah.
Okay, you had a-
So I think we're
Would you spell it for us, Gary?
No, I don't know how to spell it.
yes, so.
I guess you look at it in context of the matrix on page 29, which is our process and looking at the interest and power, if you like. So I guess quite often we have lots of consenting issues that we have to deal with. There could be conditions where we've got archaeological issues and potential koiwi and dealing with cultural issues.
But they're of a similar nature to adjacent landowners and consenting and noise or whatever to what local iwi. I'm not saying they should be above or below, and they should be equal with, shouldn't they? I mean, does it matter that it says satisfied?
Yeah, look, it's just picking up the terminology there, but look, when we are developing projects, and particularly in the consenting issues, it is really important to have a close association with iwi on how our protocols and how we deal with things, so that they are a very important stakeholder for us in every project, particularly projects that result in stormwater getting into the river and all of our river issues. So they are a pretty significant and important stakeholder for us.
Right, any other questions?
Yes. Page 34.
Yes.
We talked. So the second to last box is stormwater management devices required. The risk rating is high. Trigger point is scheme assessment, so I'm not sure what that means. It's like, look, are we talking about untested technology here, is it? Is that what's the issue?
So this is just in regard
I just want to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry, I'm Chris Barton, the Project Development Manager within the City Development Unit. It's just in regard to the treatment required for stormwater can vary between different types of projects, and at this stage we haven't resolved what that requirement for this project is. The concept design doesn't allow for additional land requirement outside of the existing designation footprint and the land we currently own for stormwater treatment or for the road.
So I don't know what you just said then.
So I think sometimes you might have wetlands and planting to deal with it, but with the narrow corridor we might have to have bespoke products that clean water. I think that's what you're trying to say. The salt traps and things like that. So
in a situation where you don't have available land to deal with your stormwater, you're saying you're trying other things.
Yeah, I think what the first part of the question was, look, this is a project where we've still got to go through the investigations and the designs and design all of these things. So with the business cases coming at the front end of the project, and we haven't been through the design yet to really work through all the consenting issues and what they are. It's just an identified risk and a very important one that we've got to deal with stormwater management, and it could be a variety of treatments that we'll talk about in the scheme assessment report.
Okay. So I appreciate that these business cases have to come up here for approval before you spend a lot of, so you can get the money to do that stuff. So it's sometimes this stuff is, and don't take this the wrong way, sort of so sketchy even a novice can't understand. Okay, page 38. Top service solution. At this early stage, it is anticipated that the project will be delivered using a mix of existing technologies and new innovations as identified. Now, that's like saying, I hope they develop a cancer drug to cure me real quick.
Really?
Well, you're just saying you're relying on something new that. So you're saying we're going to deliver this with things we know and things we haven't even discovered yet. I'm going to keep sailing until I go off the end of the world. I'll know when to stop when I'm falling.
We did hear that, Chris.
Yeah, well, it was
Do you know what that is?
yeah, well, I'm talking to the author.
Good.
I think it's it's probably a poorly worded statement, to be fair, but I think it's just identifying that this road is a continuation of an existing corridor, And so we'll be looking to continue that existing theme, and there's not a lot of opportunity for improvement, but we will be looking at new technologies and new devices and some of those innovations to improve on the service delivery aspect. I guess as part of the detailed design concept, it is a bit, as you say, sketchy at the moment.
But I'm right when I look at the breakdown of this business case. The first portion through to in this financial year is actually to do that, investigate, design. That's the biggest portion of this business case, is to actually do all that.
Yep.
And when we move to the motion, I'm going to add some things to the staff recommendation. I think that will address some of the queries you've got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Just on the next page, 39, talks about funding. You don't identify any sources of funding. Now, look, this might be just you guys in the department might know exactly where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
How can it be funded? You've got capital operating, PPP, grant. Is it just because you're at a very early stage?
So the clarity probably should be on page 42, I guess, where you got the financial case. So that's about the affordability and the funding requirements.
Okay.
So in hindsight, that could be clarified, I guess, to deal with the DC component. So we could further clarify that to say of the 2.183 million, 85% is DCs and 10% is rate loan. So that would be the section we'll deal with it. But it's in our 10-year plan, and the funding is identified in our 10-year plan and the split and who pays.
And so when something goes in our 10-year plan, once we've approved it, that means council's approved it. So we you know that you're good for the rates portion.
Yep.
I guess the DC bit, sort of. But are you, is the, like, subsidies, transport subsidies, that sort of stuff, has that been approved at that time?
So a road like this won't attract transport subsidies
Okay.
because it's to do with growth, but when we're programming projects, we would have a view and a guess of whether we were likely to get a transport subsidy, and we would program that in, but we don't particularly have approval for that. So that's one of the things we've got to do, is go and win the subsidy and build the case for it. But at a program level, many years ahead, we are making assumptions what to build into our 10-year plan. Sometimes we'll be conservative and assume no subsidy, and if we win one, that's a bonus. So we just bit of a mixture.
Things that go in our 10-year plan, there's still uncertainty as to funding for them.
Probably for transport on the subsidy one, but every other project we do look quite carefully through our DC policy of what's growth related and what percentage, the DC allocation methodology that we've been talking to you about. So there's a careful look at every project in terms of the mix of the funding, in terms of rate loans, DCs, etc.
Okay, thank you. Just in the same box, potential value for money, which I was delighted I saw that one. It says the preferred option maximises value for money through, that should be, eliminating future risk and cost implications by providing the strategic link for the Rototuna School Collector Road. Point 2, delivery of physical works via a public tender process. To what extent is that a real answer, or is that just like the standard answer you whack in? Like have you actually been through a value type process, value for money type process?
Yeah. So a lot of these growth projects, I probably get started in the structure plan process and the district plan process. So where we're determining what our road structure is and whether they're arterials and whether they're local roads and who pays for them. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the decision to build the roads comes at that stage. That comment there, I think there are bespoke comments for each of the projects rather than a standard one. And you can see the link to the Rototuna School Collector Road there. So I think in this one here in particular, my view is this is a little bit of lead infrastructure. So we're building an arterial road in some cases, and maybe our dealings with Glasedale and Rivington partnership. On the other side, we'd wait until we're aligned with the developer, and so we're working together and delivering sections at the same time. But this one here is a little bit of lead infrastructure because of the school. And
So
the
lead means
connectivity.
going ahead of the developers.
Ahead of the development. So it will generate the development, but one of the main purposes
But
we're
that's
doing
a-
on this one is the school and the connectivity for the school.
Okay. So being lead, does that, if you're ahead of developers, does that expose us to a wee bit of risk?
Yeah, and at times that is our business. We do have to put in lead infrastructure. You know, big interceptors are definitely lead infrastructure. Our investments in our treatment plants are lead infrastructure because we're building capacity, and one of the business cases we'll come to in a few minutes. We're investing now for capacity for the next 10 to 15 years, so that's lead infrastructure.
And say say interest rates went up to 20% and no one built anymore. And I'm talking totally hypothetical and just trying to. So there's a risk there, right? That's when we're taking risk.
That's absolutely the risk that we're dealing with all the time in terms of, you know, just-in-time sort of infrastructure and trying to match the market, and that's what we do all of the time. As a collective council, we're just trying to get that right.
Okay. Nearly finished. Page 41.
No, keep on going, Gary.
What's the record? The last case there, the last thing is contractor. You talk about 3 to 4, and this is just, I'm just trying to get my head around sort of risk. There are 3 to 4 experienced contractors operating in the Waikato region. These, you know, to the extent you can get a, and I'm not, there's no criticism at all here, but to the extent you can get a competitive tender, you'll hope you'll get better pricing. So we're at risk at any time that, like, I guess there's a lot going on now, I would assume. So is there situations where there's no, you've got to take the price, you know?
No, look,
How can we alleviate?
we're lucky in the Waikato that we've got quite a healthy competitive market, and I think we do get multiple tenders for our work. Look, sometimes we'll be very strategic for our big projects when we put them on the market, and we'll coordinate with NZTA, or if they've got a lot of work on the market, we might not go on the market at the same time, and because there's a lot of effort required in tendering. But look, we are very lucky.
So just to be clear, you would be unlikely to throw out a tender when you got NZTA tendering for all the stuff, because guys will just pick and
I think the issue is for big projects, it takes a lot of effort to put the tender together and tender, and so we don't want to put our projects out when everyone's busy tendering, because they're more likely just to put in a high price in case they get it rather than be really keen on winning it. So sometimes we're just watching the market and when we go out with our projects. So, but look, we're very lucky in the Waikato that we do have a healthy contracting market, which is quite different from some other parts in New Zealand where they're quite reliant on 1 or 2 contractors, but we have a very competitive market, would be my view.
How would someone at the governance body know that that's what you're doing?
Well, we have a delegation policy, and quite often we'll bring to you the contracts, you know, that are outside the CEO's delegation to, just like you were doing for the paper before, to look at the tender result, and we'll tell you how many tenders and etc. that we've had. So the very big ones do come to you. But we have delegations under that to do that ourselves.
We also report to you at the Finance Committee on the procurement report as well, which indicates...
We've just knocked out.
Well, it still exists. The information's still there.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. And Chris.
Yes, Councillor Forsyth?
Chris, I don't see any reference to alternative transport modes here. You're building a road, and actually saying within the next article, where is there an alignment with the bike plan?
Yep. So I prefer to say we're building a transport corridor. So it's just part and parcel of when we're doing our design is active modes and public transport, and looking at all of that as part of the design. So we're at the beginning and we're moving forward, but we would look for all of those linkages. And in fact, I think the structure plan gives some views on where walking and cycling should be that we'd have to comply with. I'm looking to my right for a nod.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I know the amount of work you do in that cycling space, and that you do fully understand what's going on, etc. But I'm nervous that there's actually no reference to it here in anywhere that I can see. And as I said, even in the next northern roading link.
So can I assure you it's a really important part of this project and our engagement with the schools and all the developers in the area, because there's some very important walking and cycling links to be built as a network in that whole area. So we are on top of it, and it probably should be in the business case if it's not. So
Bring out the slippers.
Yep. So just assurance that it's a very important just part of building a road now. As I say, they're transport corridors rather than roads.
Okay, okay.
Okay, I'll move the recommendation with the addition of a C, which says that an update report on progress be reported to the Finance Committee in June 2016. I want to just tie that in. I'll just check that date, Chris, because I want to just get an update. Councillors will see that in the subsequent business cases, I'm going to put those on the project monitoring report, but this one I didn't see as needing that. But I just want to capture an update as you move from investigation design into the construction phase. And the reason I think an update report is useful is just to cover off a few of these questions that have been asked, but also there's a lot of activity going on around there. The new school will be open by that date because it's opening in February, the junior high school. There's developers who are building roads, and this is all part of connecting the whole thing up. And I think it would be helpful for us to have an update on, you know, the state of the play up there. Yep. And I'm picking the June date. No June meeting in July. Okay, so well, it's before the end of the financial year, so well, maybe too soon.
Yeah. No, that would be fine. Yep.
In terms of useful information for us, that's all.
Yep. No, that should
maybe
be about the optimum time because.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So how have we got no council? Oh, finance meeting. Yeah. Okay. Yes, late May meetings. That'll be fine. So that's for the May 2016 meeting. Okay, so I've moved that. Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Now, is there any debate on this matter? No? Okay, can we do this on the voices? All those in favour? Are there any against? Okay, thank you, Carrie. Right, Chris, the next one is item 7, which, again, thank you very much, very helpful pictures and maps, which I think have been really useful. I'm just signalling this is one that I think needs to be added to the project monitoring list that's reported to Finance because of spend and what it's all about, and particularly since we're doing an intervention here that we probably wouldn't normally do, which is a street through that neighbourhood business centre, isn't it? We're actually doing something we don't usually do.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So can I just ask Lance through the chairs, is the Rototari Town Centre already a major project we report on?
Yes.
So we have a
Well, you need
project,
to
so we could
add
add
that up into here.
the CDP, so we could roll it together?
Well, they're separate budget lines, though, aren't they? And I mean, what I'm looking for, I don't mind how you do it, but what I'm looking for is high visibility of this project and its progress in the project monitoring report, and you choose how to do it.
Correct.
But it's got to be visible.
Julie, can I ask Lance what CDP is?
It's a comprehensive development plan,
Oh, okay.
which is like a
Like a
mini
bit
struc-
more than a development plan.
a mini structure plan above a resource consent but below a structure plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so questions on this one? Councillor Mallett.
First, page 47, paragraph 8. There's considerable third-party reliance. There is considerable third-party reliance on programs for this project, and this has resulted in the development of the plan being behind program. So, is this behind? So, does this allude to sort of a carryover type scenario?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And what is the delay?
So it's to do with the comprehensive development plan and working with the developer there and the development of the whole town centre.
So that's a matter of just getting agreement about how things are going to be built and that
Just
sort of
how things are going to be built and when they're going to be built. So my understanding is it's all going very well, but it's just a little bit later than we had anticipated when we put the money in the project 2 years ago into the 10-year plan. But it's going very well, but it's just a little bit behind program.
Okay, thank you. And, okay, so that, on page 50, paragraph 40, we're starting, I think, to get some indication of the value of the a potential carryover. Is that right?
Yep, so we are trying to give an indication of what we think the carryover would be, the deferred capital expenditure.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Rob, your turn.
Yeah, my question follows on from Gary's, and that is about will we be assuming that on the basis that the third parties are slower off the rank to get the work done than we would like them to be, will we have sufficient time to reassess the annual expenditure, the annual capital expenditure, so it actually comes off the list before the year starts, and then we don't have the issue of there being a delay or a carryover actually occurring in that particular year? So will we know well in advance how far behind the third-party developer is? Because presumably we won't want to do this work until they're ready. So what I'm looking at is how we're going to manage the capital expenditure, say in, let's say, 2016, 2017, which is $2 million. If the developer's not ready, will we know prior to the start of that year whether that $2 million should go into the following year, so that we don't have the issues around the deferrals being reported during that particular year? Or is it not as precise as that?
It's probably not as precise as that, but just to be clear, the delays are the collaboration we've got going with the developer and putting the comprehensive developer plan together. So I'd hate people to think the developer's behind. It's the collaboration and putting it together. I would expect through the 2016-17 annual plan and the information that we would have at the critical time, there would be more refined, and it would be a lot clearer on what the likely cash flow was going to be. So it's through the 16,
so Lance,
17.
So I've got everyone standing up.
It should be quite clear within the next 2 to 3 months. It's actually the planning that's holding up the building. So the CDP is a little bit behind, and it's a little bit of chicken and egg. So there's a certain some traffic assessment plans that have to be done. The footprint, which is pretty much on page 54 of your agenda item, that map there at the bottom, that's getting that locked down, but there's just some details that have to be worked through around the footprint, and they're locking down pretty much the footprint where the supermarket site is in the red blob there. Once that's pretty much locked down, we should be able to get the CDP into the regulatory process and go through that. So I'm reasonably confident that we'll get that done in the next 2 to 3 months. There's just a whole lot of refinement, but it's quite important to get that refinement because it actually affects everything with the park to the north and the absolute location of the roads, and Ken's team doing surveying and all that sort of thing. So, but as Chris said, I think we'll be in good shape around March to give some real indication on when the capital spend will be.
Okay. And Paul, did you have anything to add to that?
Just to add to that, we also have a process through the Capital Program Monitoring Group to review the proportions that have been allocated to particular years ahead of the annual plan process as well. And that should be reporting back to the Finance Committee in February.
Okay. All right, good. That was your
Yep,
question?
thank you.
I just wanted to look page 53, Chris, second paragraph, because this is a sort of a collaborative approach as we're hearing. It says here, though council will manage the project, adjacent landowners will also contribute to parts of the upgrade, and this is contribute to this project and this build, right?
Yeah.
So are we Are we certain, or do we have knowledge at this stage about what proportions that might be, and what our, are we a 75% contributor, a 50% contributor, or is that yet to be resolved?
I think that's yet to be resolved. My understanding there's some principles there, but it's yet to be resolved.
Right, so again, you'll be able to give us a lot more clarity when that comes back February, March or so, about what proportion. So
Correct.
when we look at the 8 million, that's the gross figure without any contribution, right? Yes.
Correct.
Yes, so that figure may change as a result of other contributions. Have I got that right?
That figure is the estimated council contribution towards the
So
contract
it's
at this
the net.
stage.
And on
Yeah,
the
so-
net,
yeah,
then,
yeah.
okay, because then on top of that, there's further work which other parties will fund.
Yep.
Right, so you will then have clarity in March, April about, well, you don't expect that figure to change. That's our bottom line figure.
At this stage, yes.
Yep.
And, yeah, okay, all
Your
right,
Worship, we've made that very clear with
Right.
the developers too,
okay,
that, we do have budgets.
yes,
So,
surprisingly, yes.
Chris's team have been pretty hard in that area.
Okay, that's good. And I think there was, no, I think that was it, except I would note, I think on page 56, there's a whole section in there that probably shouldn't be there, 1.3. That's the old one. Yeah. The old cut and paste job, eh? Good. Okay, so unless there are any other questions, I'll move this with a C. Just for clarity, Chris, to say that this project is to be added to the project monitoring report that is reported to the Finance Committee, and you can determine how you're going to represent that. Okay, so I've moved, seconded by the Councillor Pascoe. Now, is there any discussion or debate on this? Okay, so we'll do this on the voices. All those in favour? Any against? No? Okay, thank you. Right, item 8 is the next one. And this is one on
Easy, Chris.
the wastewater treatment plant capacity upgrade. Fascinating project,
Yep.
a big spend project.
I'll move, Your Worship.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Forsyth, but with the addition that we will add it to the project monitoring list. You all right about adding that? Yep. Okay, so it's got a C as well, Jude. And who's going to second that? Councillor Pascoe? Yep. Are there any questions on this one? Councillor Tooman?
Do we eventually, probably a stupid question for an engineer, do we actually ever reach a maximum for a wastewater? So how much can be triggered for? Or, I'm just wondering, look at $18 million, what would it cost to build a smaller processing plant somewhere else in the city? Because as the city expands, I think, well, how many more pipes are we going to have to put in here to get all this stuff into the water treatment plant?
Look, I could answer that, but I'll hand it over to my transport engineer. He'll do a much better job.
Look, the site was procured as the central treatment plant for Hamilton, and there's certainly a lot of benefit in just operating one facility with one team and one site. This site has potential for a number of future investments and capacity as the city continues to grow or industry grows. But look, yeah, definitely another small plant somewhere else is an option, but small usually brings a very high upfront operating cost until you get to the sort of the size of what we've got. So at the moment, our discharge consents are only for this site and accommodate this investment in capacity and resilience. So this project's in this site in the 10-year plan.
And that probably contrasts with the next one we're going to do on the water treatment plant, because that's got a smaller footprint and it's got a defined life, and we'll have to look for another site beyond a certain date for that one. So Andrew's answer to this question is there was some really good thought and investment went into the site in the 70s to make the site big enough that we can just keep adding for quite a while.
I just have a question just about, which is a sort of, I guess, a question that can apply to a number of these. one of the risk factors is just the whole project management. And particularly for projects that span over a number of years and big spend, and if you look on page 81, it's helpfully set out there. What steps do you take to ensure that the project management is consistent? Now, generally that's done by staff, but of course there's a risk there that staff members go, and you know who's stepping in. Yep. So this is a significant spend for the city. This is a you know, there's risks in the whole project because of the nature of what it is and all of those things. So what do you do to protect that project management?
So we've got some pretty sophisticated project structures sitting in behind what you're seeing here today in terms of steering groups and project teams and governance groups and how we're running the project. So there is, hopefully councillors will be really can be assured that there's some really good procedures in there. A project like this, like the Ring Road, we had the PricewaterhouseCoopers audit come in at one stage just to check all of our procedures, and this is probably of that scale that would put that on the schedule to come in at a certain time to just check our structures and particularly to check our assurance steps that we have in place at critical points of gateways and decision points, that we've done all the right things, the right risk management. So there's a lot of sophistication that sits in behind this in our team on all of our projects and what we do and how we do it.
And so the knowledge about the project is shared, so that if for some reason the main person is not available, there is enough people with enough knowledge to continue to manage the project.
Like a project like this is a huge team to deliver a project like this, and look, we need a lot of external expertise because this is really high technology and processing. So, so Andrew, have you got anything to add to that?
The project structure is set out on page 121, so it gives a sense of the scale of integration. And so there's no one person who we're absolutely reliant on.
So these are probably the most difficult projects that I've ever been associated with in my career, because we've got an operating plant. So we're actually trying to work on live plants to do big stuff, but these plants are running full noise to deliver water or treat wastewater treatment plants. So they're really complicated in how you integrate capital upgrades and that. So it needs a lot of sophistication, and there is a lot sitting in behind what we do.
Okay, good. And look, the highlight of the report for me was page 125. That I found the most exciting page of the whole report.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it? Yeah.
It's staggeringly impressive, I have to say. Yep. I actually thought it was fantastic that you included it, because it just is completely and utterly meaningless to me.
But it does show the complexity and the thinking process that we go through. Yeah.
I think you put it in there to show just how onto it you are, that you can understand that.
I thought it was one of your children.
Yeah, could be the Christmas bauble hanging map for
is
the
that going from your toilet to the plant, is it?
Okay, no, that's great, thank you. Yes, Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Just to be clear, and this is pitched as an upgrade in scale, not a major change in technology. Is that right? Because you've done we went on the bus drive very early on, and you guys were telling us about the new technology you're using. This is just making that bigger. It's not another change in technology, is it?
Well,
scale and technology
the baseline we're coming at this with is just an increase in scale, but we are absolutely investigating other alternatives for innovation. With would give us a better compliance outcome or a better financial outcome. So we're doing all that at the moment, but the baseline at the moment is just another widget the same. But that doesn't mean to say that's what we'll actually get to build when we come back to council with the procurement strategy.
So if I can add to that, particularly on our wastewater treatment plant, our compliance issues are really stringent and really challenging to meet. So in this upgrade here, we actually do have to look at technology and innovations and just how we can continue to comply with our consents. So they're pretty challenging to meet, and that's that's part of this challenge, is that it's about capacity, but it's also about compliance and how we can stay in compliance. And look, we're moving into a new era too with healthy rivers. I think everybody in the Waikato is going to be tested in terms of raising the bar, in terms of doing better than what they're doing now. So we have to have that in mind as well as we move 10 years away to our next consent. You know, that's not a long time. So the decisions we make now, you know, start winding into our consent in 10 years' time. And the bar is definitely going to be lifted through healthy rivers.
Okay. Thank you. On page 38, paragraph 38, page 81, the upgrading will be required regardless of the future management structure, which alludes to the possible CCO regional thing.
Yep.
To what extent is it expected that if the CCO comes on, is expected that this plant will be used? I mean, will some, and I can't remember how the heck the thing was all jacked up, but that we might be taking wastewater from other.
It's possible. I mean, I couldn't predict what the CCO might do, but
Yeah.
if there was a small plant in Waikato District that was struggling, I would think it would make sense to look at the cost of decommissioning that and putting a pipe into this plant.
It's not reliant on us getting that stuff.
Oh
though.
no. This is to meet our
Our own thing. So
needs in terms of growth and compliance.
So you could say it's based on what Hamilton needs, and it won't preclude a different structure in the future.
To the answer to the question about scalability.
Yeah.
So this project is not in any way, shape or form tailored to meet the needs of
a CCO.
Of a CCO at all. But all I'm saying is that a CCO might look at everything within its control, and it might say, rather than run a small existing plant, we'll accelerate one of the future planned upgrades and grow this plant more quickly. But that's very speculative.
So when the guys, what's their name? Who were they? They did their report. Cranleys. Yes, thank you. When Cranleys did that, they were aware of this. Obviously, this was in our 10-year plan, and so that was factored into what they're. So nothing in here is would surprise them.
No.
I hope. Okay. All right. Thank you. And just one other one. 85, page 85, the last paragraph talks about while delivering on social and cultural environmental responsibilities. I understand environmental responsibilities and health and all that stuff. What, and this might be just a, sort of a pat sentence you put down everywhere, but what particularly are the social and cultural responsibilities? And look, I'm not trying to trap you. I just want to know what does it cost to meet our social responsibilities with regard to water treatment?
The Waikato River Settlement Act includes a vision for the river.
Yep.
And so that's what that comment is intended to focus on. So we have clear obligations, but it starts to drive at our consent and future reviews of our consent in terms of what we put into the river by way of characteristics in the final effluent. So this project is to try and improve and manage within our consent in terms of the compliance. But the plant's not always compliant, and that's where we get those obligations in terms of...
Because most regions have they mitigate their effects. Here in the Waikato, because of that act, we have to enhance the quality of the Waikato River.
Okay.
So that's a really high hurdle, and it comes from...
So okay, I don't want to challenge the fact that agreement's in place, but it'd be good to know how much more it costs to meet those things rather than just our environment. Well, I would assume that your key issue is making sure it's environmentally acceptable, but if there's all this other spiritual, whatever stuff,
so the way
it'd be good to know what that's costing the ratepayer.
So it's difficult to quantify at the moment. So we have a consent, so we've got I'll call it an entitlement. We've got a consent that allows us to run the plant in a certain way. Where that will start to take an effect is through the Healthy Rivers plan changes. So Healthy Rivers will have to pick up that vision. So it'll be in future regional council reviews of our consent, or when our consent comes up for renewal, that those provisions will come through more strongly, including the national provisions in the freshwater policy statement as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I couldn't tell you what it would cost today because none of that stuff has landed, but
It is landing very soon, so
Yes.
like in the next, certainly in the next 5 to 10 years, it's coming, the compliance will be harder, and we just need to keep abreast of that, and that's why we're starting to think through this project, just what might be coming and how we future-proof and how we manage this upgrade.
So social and cultural things will drive costs over and above what a rational person would consider to be environmentally safe.
No, look, I think those things will get
Whatever.
built into our consent. They manifest themselves in our consent in terms of the quality of what we do and what we put into the river. So, look, they're not driving costs on their own. They're just part of the consenting regime for us. And social is probably the public health aspects of what we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I mean, you might want to send to Councillor Mallett some of that paperwork on the freshwater work, because that is going to be significant.
I've got some of it.
Yeah, significant. And maybe circulate some of the stuff to councillors, because that's coming, and that is, the benchmark is very, very high.
If council wished, I could arrange for a briefing in terms of where the Healthy Rivers is at.
Look, maybe
in
you
the
should
new
add
year.
that onto a briefing list next year, although there have been offers for people to go to some of the presentations. It will impact on future investment, yeah. Okay, any other questions? No? Right.
You
We've
look
got
at
a
me then.
mover and a seconder, and we've added in about project reporting. So I'm going to do it on the voices. All those in favour? Any against? Carried. Water treatment plant capacity upgrade business case. This one's $28.7 million of investment. Chris, is there anything you want to draw our attention to? Otherwise,
No, I think we'll just answer any questions, councillors.
okay. Have anyone got any questions on this one?
Very expensive.
Yes, it is expensive.
So clearly this will be on the monitoring report as well.
Yes, it will be. I just wanted to, just on page 161, just about assumptions, Chris, just about population growth predictions, because as we know, they're already remodelling those. As the city seems to be growing faster than originally predicted. I'm just, one of the reasons why I'm interested in the continue to project monitor this through that report is to keep looking at some of these assumptions, particularly those ones. I'm sure you've built a buffer into this, but have you retested those assumptions more recently, given that we had a presentation the other day about assumptions and, we were looking at them?
But, yeah. So we're on approaching the edge now in terms of what the current plant can do.
That's right.
At the moment, also those assumptions inform the water allocation consent, which is what we can take out of the rivers. That consent's a few years old now,
Yes,
so
yes.
we're locked into that. So it really speaks to how quickly you reach the maximum allocation. On top of that, yes, you're right. Every LTP and sometimes in between, we retest population. And we're also doing that collegiately through Future Proof.
Yes.
There's a body of work at the moment looking at all the allocations for municipal supplies, so not only our city, but Cambridge, Te Awamutu, Narrawhia, Huntly, and just aggregating that up and see what the full picture looks like. So there's constant retesting. There's no cause for concern that I can see in this next 10-year period.
Okay.
The bigger consumer of water would be major industry.
Yes.
And look, I think we've got provision in for that at the moment.
Yes.
This project would be required if we were to have major industry wanting to come to town anyway in the near future.
Yep.
So this is about prudent planning for major economic development in the next 10 years.
Okay. Good. Thanks. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, a question on page 153, risks identified under 1.12. And the comment there, and it's in high risk, as a result of the investigation identifying a larger scope of urgent works in first thought, the project may not be deliverable within the current 10-year plan, which means that the project could be undeliverable. I suppose that last bit isn't probably required, but is there a high risk that the investigation will tell us, and if it does, when will it tell us within the 10-year plan if the project becomes undeliverable?
Okay, so I think, sorry, I'm not the primary author, so I think the word's a little unfortunate. So I think through the investigation, there's a risk that we might find that future parts of the plant need to be upgraded, or extra parts of the plant need to be upgraded. I think that will not render this project undeliverable. All it'll do is drive some prioritisation into the project, and then which might lead to some future conversations and future LTPs.
Which might amend the final outcome, perhaps, in terms of...
Well, it may not amend this project. It may say in year 10 we'll start a new project. I don't see that risk resulting in a fatal, we can't afford the project. I think it would, if this risk manifested itself, it would lead it to that reprioritisation and then a conversation about what's going to happen over the next 10 years.
I guess a project like this, it's almost a program of works to do the plant. So there might be, it's not just one project, there might be 10 or 15 different component projects within this program, and it's about which ones are most important to do and tailoring the funding to the priorities, and if there's not enough funding dealing with it then, but we don't know until we get through, but I think it's a good chance that the funding is there to just get the priorities at the right time.
So your scepticism at this point isn't suggesting that there's a big red flag up there that might send us 28 million into 38 or 48 million if it's all going to be delivered.
But a little bit about, as we talked about in the previous paper too, we're investing a lot of effort in hunting down innovations. And so if there was a risk in this space, I think there's also innovations in this space as well. And so it's just how that all balances out. So we really won't know until we complete a full in-depth investigation.
And I guess with the water treatment plant too, it needs to be in the context of the work we're doing on our water demand areas and our reservoirs as well, so they work together. So councillors might recall that we've got a big program of re-looking at our reservoirs to plumb them a little bit differently so we take pressure off the plant and build more resilience. So there's a number of programs coming together.
Right, any other questions? Councillor Mallett?
Just wondering if you realise that the money we get from the pensioner houses would almost pay for this.
Okay, any other questions? No? Right.
That's a good thing.
I'm happy to move the
It's a
recommendation.
helpful intervention, Councillor.
With,
Trying to put in
do you have a
context.
question?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Councillor King, and we'll add in the project management. Right. So, councillors, we're going to do this on the voices. All those in favour? Any against? Carried. Is that your last one, Chris?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, for staying and giving us these very good reports. Right, item, I've got up to 10, which we took earlier. Item 11,
Support services review, Your Worship.
support services review. So this one is on page 293. Support services review, the Chief Executive, you'll speak to us.
I'm just going to briefly introduce and hand over to Eon if he's got anything to add. So when I was appointed to the Chief Executive, I announced a review of support functions that included both corporate spend as well as the support services or corporate functions within the organisation. Eon Hall basically was seconded to a role of Commercial Director for a period of about 6 months to undertake the review. The report in front of you reflects the findings of that review and reflects there are a number of areas we can make some savings in and some additional areas that we'll continue to pursue, and potentially there'll be further savings in those areas. It's also identified from a support function point of view that we probably benchmark lean against other organisations in those areas, and there is some opportunities to optimise and probably drive some efficiencies in those areas to better deliver internal services. Hand over to Eon to add any further to that, then we'll take questions.
I think think it's pretty clear.
Yep.
Ian, I think we'll just move to questions. So questions can be directed, I guess, first and foremost to the CE, because it is his review, but Ian will be there to assist. So, Councillor Pascoe.
Yes, I've got quite a number of questions. First one is around paragraph 41, which is on the fleet. The council spends approximately 1.4 million on its vehicle fleet. Is that net of recoveries from staff, from salary sacrifice and so forth?
Yes.
Yep. Second paragraph 43 deals with the fact that we lease our cars, motor vehicles through Fleet Smart. Did your review conclude that this was the cheaper option as opposed to ownership, where we would, I would suspect, have a lower cost of capital than a finance company would have in a lease?
Yeah, but it's a complete operating lease, including your maintenance and servicing and all your procurement costs and those other sorts of bits and pieces. When we benchmarked it, it looked, it's the most common model for managing the fleet around, and our costs were considerably less than, from a vehicle point of view, than commercial through some of the all government options. There didn't seem to be any reason to move away from leasing.
Okay, so even when you pulled out the maintenance costs and were left with the interest costs, because obviously in a business scenario versus a local government scenario, the cost of capital is quite different, isn't it? That you would expect the cost of capital to be a lot cheaper and a lot less in local government than it would be in private enterprise if you're benchmarking fleet leases with private enterprise.
Yeah, I didn't go to that detail of analysis in this space.
Okay. Under the legal spend, you cover two areas there. One, did your study, your review, consider whether staff solicitors might be a cheaper option than as regular use of Tompkins Wake?
I could probably answer that one, Councillor Pascoe, through the chair. So it did in a degree, and part of the recommendation was to move the project management as a first stage step of our legal services contract through to the democracy team. There was for two reasons. We believe that there's a significant advantage to be gained in actually project managing our spend. I've got no issue with the quality of the value for money of our legal service provider. They do a great job. Where I do have particular concern as an organisation, are we optimally requesting service? Is probably the best way of doing it. So having one part of the organisation responsible for the overall project management was the first step in that area. And there is significant value in having a provider deliver those services, because we get all skills in all areas across a number of different disciplines. So we considered that. One of the other reasons I've asked the democracy team to pick it up is there's some basic advice that we request from Tompkins Wake that could be quite well within the mandate and the remit of, not mandate's wrong, within the remit and the skill set of our democracy team. There's a number of qualified lawyers in the democracy team, and some of the basic interpretations and basic understanding of some of these legal questions could be quite well dealt with in-house as well. So we sort of erred on a mild blend. Significant portion of the advice will continue to go through our legal service provider, but where we've got some more of the simple requests and interpretations, we'll probably use in-house support for that.
Okay. So in paragraph 51, you mentioned the procurement of councils on the contract with Tompkins Wake expires in June. Procurement of the council's ongoing legal services will be the subject of a report in December 2015. Is this the report? Is it?
No, so that should have been updated. There will be a report coming to council in February 2016.
February.
And what that report will be looking at is currently the LAS is looking at a legal services panel, and we'll be bringing a report in February which is asking this council to consider whether they want to be involved in that approach or whether they want to stick with the current arrangement whereby we when we tender for legal services just to one provider and have one exclusive provider. So in February we'll bring that to council for consideration.
Okay. Okay, so the next question is probably about LAS, and that's under 55, 58 and 61, where you're looking at design, print, media services. Is that something, I think that is something that we currently do through LAS. has your review, Eon, identified that there are further cost savings that we could achieve in this area rather than the reliance on the contract that we have currently or the contract that we use via the LAS mechanism?
Let me answer those independently. So around website hosting, our online presence is increasingly growing as we continue to communicate with our stakeholders in the community in that way. We currently have a shared service arrangement for our primary website hosting, which is the hamilton.co.nz website and some of the others, a few of the subsequent corporate sites. That arrangement we have with Datacom and Rotorua District. There are 17 councils on that platform. If additional councils come on that platform, we get a marginal decrease in our operating costs. That was something that we did with the Phoenix program of work when we established that. The opportunity in website hosting is we have a myriad 20s of other sites which we use multiple local providers and hosters. Is the opportunity there is really about rationalisation of those. Whether or not we need the resilience and the cost of our main website hosting for those other smaller sites is a question that needs to be answered. But there is certainly some opportunity in that space yet to be quantified. Around the design, print yep. and media services, I understand work's already underway here. Around media buyer, I think is about or imminent to be announced for helping us with that. We do use, again, a large variety traditionally of small, or we have a lot of accounts with people where we get design and print and those other sorts of activities carried out. There's a real opportunity there for some rationalisation as well. And that work is underway with the communications unit as we speak. I can't quantify exactly what's there. In the print space, we are in discussions with a couple of the other councils right now about potentially them leveraging our print room and providing further cost savings. But it's too early to really talk about what those savings could potentially be, if any.
Right. And the last question really covers paragraphs 9, 11 and 79. And just if I could sort of summarise what I think I'm trying to ask as a question here. Does it suggest that under 9, where customer feedback combined with benchmarking indicates the level of service expectations of the business are not aligned with resources allocated, does that mean, do you think that the resources misaligned or is it lacking?
So I think can I answer this in 3 parts? So first and foremost, when I benchmarked the majority of our support services, we were quite lean. It isn't an exact science. It gives you an indication. It'll help you find outliers. It's not going to tell you exactly where that we are over-resourced or where exactly or even, but it'll give you the outliers. The information that I gathered, whether it be using the BAS information, which is the Treasury public benchmarking information, other councils and commercial organisations that were good enough to provide us information, would indicate that in most of our support service areas, we're at the bottom end of the range, right? The second part of this
when it says bottom end of the range, meaning
we are leaner, generally leaner than most, and that's not to be surprised given when we had the workshop we talked about the amount of efficiencies we took out of the business as part of that efficiency drive in the organisation. The second part of it is when you've got extremely limited resources, you need to be very focused on how you apply those and make conscious choice. So one of the comments I've made in there is about the strategy. So I think where we need to start with a number of our support services is actually at the strategic and say, what is this support service actually going to provide? What are the levels of service? What are the expectations? Once we've done that and we've aligned the resources that we have or that we need, then we're in a position to say, are we resourced sufficiently for the expectations of the business?
I just want to add to that, it's very difficult to prioritise if you don't have a clear strategy. And so the first thing you've got to do is set your strategy, and then you can actually prioritise effectively within that, and that's at a unit level and at an organisational level as well.
Okay. And then paragraphs 11 and 79 deal with that strategies that predate the Hamilton plan need to be reviewed to establish they are still relevant. And I guess this was a little bit of the discussion that we had in the Thursday S&P meeting particularly around the social well-being. And then it follows on in 79 where the organisation is still adjusting to the impact of changes to the Local Government Act, which I assume is the 2012 amendment to the Local Government Act. Do you think it's important that we need to have an action plan to deal with? I mean, these are related in some ways because it was the social well-being that was significantly changed in the 2012 amendment to the Local Government Act. Do you think one of the recommendations, and I know there's no recommendations here, but one of the recommendations should be that we would have a strategy or an action plan to ensure that the strategies are brought into line with the Hamilton plan, if they're not, and that we are operating in accordance with the 2012 Local Government Amendment Act, if we're not.
Yeah, so I'm first going to ask that we are operating within the 2012 Amendment Act. So in terms of 79, that's more of a operational comment in terms of the way we engage with the elected members. A simple example is previously it was the responsibility of management to come up with a budget and bring it to the elected members. Now it's led in a different way. We've responded to that, and there were some toing and froing that weren't necessarily highly effective through the 10-year plan process that we've now worked through, and we've improved the annual plan process. So that is well in hand. In terms of the strategy alignment, there's already a work program that's already well underway, and as we go through things, as we go through various plans, we do tidy them up and make sure they're aligned. You've got to remember that the Hamilton plan's all-encompassing, and it's effectively what we do within our underlying strategies and plans contributes towards the Hamilton plan. There's no need to have a complex wiring diagram that effectively ties these all together. As long as the spirit of the Hamilton plan is encapsulated within our documents, I think we're on the right track, and I don't think there's any of our strategies that aren't aligned. There are some that probably are outdated, which is not necessarily to do with the Hamilton plan that we need to go and have a look at, but we'll work through those. And there's a work program in place that the Strategy and Policy Committee picks up, so I think we've got that covered.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Councillor Gallagher, I had you next.
No, I was just noted 39 around further optimisation work, and that's obviously around the waters, but I've just clicked on that, so that's logical. I get that. Sorry, no question. So what you're saying there is once we know the outcome of waters, then obviously there's further work to be done on this building.
That's correct, Councillor Gallagher. Yeah. And it's basically so we have no idea what's going on, hold the space for the time being, wait for those decisions to go whatever way they're going to go, and then reassess. Even if we don't progress down the track of a water CCO, there are still opportunities within this building to optimise the floor split.
But very logically you want to find the outcome of that exercise before you do any further work.
Yep, there'll probably be some interim tidying up. Yeah. There's a few floors that aren't necessarily logically laid out, and that would have been done regardless. And the next big trigger will be a decision, if there is a decision to proceed or not in terms of the water CCO, then I'll make further decisions in terms of the way we optimise the municipal building.
And please don't misperceive this statement at all. Then, of course, there's the work around the community facilities vis-a-vis, the Caro block. We have the voluntary groups in there as well, and whether in terms of future purchase, then that's the best location for those groups.
I intend to bring a report back to Council about the use of the Caro building, and that will investigate all options about further use for community purposes. For example, Councillor, maybe that becomes the ideal location for other centralised location of community services, or it may be an opportunity to go for a commercial operation. I'll bring those options to Council to consider.
Good opportunity for Accessible to rent some of that space.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Toomer?
That'd be local.
Just a couple on the fleet management here. So I noticed under 45 fleet management.
Fleet management.
Yep.
Yes,
Page 297.
Page 297. Under 45, bullet point 4, I noticed that you're only installing GPS into new vehicles where the annual mileage is greater than 10,000 k. Would this not be part of the fleet management overall, that all vehicles are fitted with GPS?
Should be.
I'm just wondering why you...
Leon can answer that.
Yeah, look, it was a basic cost-benefit analysis at a point that GPS doesn't have zero cost associated with it. The recommendation that we took to SLT, or was taken to SLT by the fleet manager, was that any new vehicles that we purchase from this moment forward would have the GPS. We have a 3-yearly cycle, so on a lot of those vehicles. And secondly, if they're not doing more than 10,000 kilometres, there may not be a lot, and we're talking the whole fleet, right? Tractors, machinery, not just cars. That there wasn't at that 10,000 K mark. It just didn't seem, for the volume of kilometres we were doing, to justify the use of GPS.
So sorry, just a bit more clarity required there. It wasn't. There just was no cost benefit in installing GPS.
So I don't have the figures. I don't have the figures in front of me, but it's quite pricey to actually put the GPS in and lease the units and have them inside the vehicle. And we just felt, or the fleet manager at the time I worked with on this, just felt that that 10,000 kilometre limit was a pragmatic point that says when vehicles are doing over that number of Ks a year, that would be the trigger to ensure that we had GPS.
But that had a rationale underneath it.
Yes, look, I don't have...
It wasn't just a feel.
No, there was a rationale, and this was with that. We did a lot of benchmarking around fleet. We worked with a lot of other... So the benchmarking with fleet was quite difficult because it was hard to get costs out of other organisations about what they were speaking with fleet, but they were willing to share with us best practice in terms of what worked for them and what didn't and those sorts of things. And that's one of the things that came out of that.
And one of the things since... because we finalised this report a few months back, one of the things I've been looking at since then is spending a lot of time considering the health and safety benefits of our fleet in terms of what are the best health and safety bare minimums to include in our fleet vehicles, and like as simple as reversing cameras. Reversing cameras.
5-star rating.
Yeah, that's 5-star rating. Cruise control, for example, cruise control is a key aspect as well. I mean, people using cruise control on trips. And one of the things, sorry,
breathalyzers.
And one of the aspects that's getting more common and as price permits is the use of GPS and GPS tracking technology as well. So this is one, whilst we've established it for this report, there was some detailed work done by the fleet manager to determine the most optimal point in investigation based on mileages and cost and so forth. It's something I'm going to continue to challenge. And as the GPS units become more affordable, we're going to look to roll them out. But by the time that happens, it may well be that the fleet's been completely refreshed and all vehicles already have it in it anyway.
Because all new vehicles are getting it anyway. So this is just the retrospective retrofit side thing. Just further on the fleet, sorry, Councillor Chairman, do we lease the GPS? We don't purchase
so
it. It's all leased, right?
Currently we lease the GPS. There's an opportunity to purchase that outright as well.
But it's a cheaper option, isn't it, leasing?
It enables us to build it into the recovery of that unit rather than it's so the vehicles are recovered against each unit is charged when they do a trip and other bits and pieces, so that's an operating cost. So from a financial perspective it made sense.
Is it yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thanks. Councillor Chairman, sorry?
Yeah, the other one is looking at vehicle rentals. Any trip which is over 100k, you said that's been achieved. Do you actually get a rental car for anybody going over 100k?
No, we considered, sorry.
It's got here achieved.
You're not allowed to go over 100k, Councillor Tooman.
100k distance I'm talking about,
Oh.
you know.
104.
So what does that mean? What does that bullet point mean?
So one of the ways and I'm not sure if that achieved is quite right, sorry, and I apologise for that. So one of the ways we're looking at improving the utilisation of fleet and reducing our pool size is that when staff go to a conference or something like that and we have a pool vehicle, it sits, instead of it being made available for many uses during that day, it actually just sits there and it's no longer available in the pool for general use because it's sitting at a hotel in Auckland or at a conference site somewhere. So one of the things we're considering as we reduce the fleet size is as an overflow opportunity to actually do a deal with a rental car company and go, okay, it's an overnight trip. We can also then look at smaller and reduced size of the vehicles in our fleet because the cars in our fleet are only really being used for around town trips rather than having bigger cars for the longer trips.
That's right, because that's one of the drawbacks, isn't it? The vehicle's out of action for everyone to use in a couple of days.
It's basically,
absolutely.
It's basically fixed cost
That's
recoveries.
town, but 100k seems a bit ridiculous to me.
Yeah, overnight.
Overnight.
And one more question is, reducing the fleet by 5 vehicles, is that across the whole 183 vehicles which are in the fleet? Or is it just in cars which you want to reduce?
It's in the cars space. I should have been clear on that, sorry.
Okay.
most of the fleet is trucks and utes and stuff for the Duke Street type people, isn't it?
Correct. And the GPS information will give us better data to understand the utilisation of that and to see if there's opportunities for further savings.
Right. Okay. Councillor Mount, did I have you down? Maybe not. No. Anyone else? Councillor King?
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments that I'll turn into questions. GPS is on machinery, on mobile machinery. At least it's tracking where they are, if they've got stolen and stuff, because some of them are quite high value units. May help with insurance, I don't know.
There's just another aspect to that as well. From a health and safety point of view, when we have solo staff working on jobs, it's actually quite good to have the vehicles GPS so that if there's any incidents, you can actually locate that person far easier as well.
Oh, so that's outside. I mean, obviously those vehicles don't do your 10,000 kilometres, but just thought. And the other one was with operating leases. I presume you take into consideration the huge costs, because we do operating leases, of reconditioning when the vehicle comes back. So every stone chip means a new windscreen, every scratch on the car, every thing apart from wear and tear, every curved wheel you have to pay for at the end, and it's often not, that can come to thousands of dollars, and that's often not considered when you're being sold the package of an operating lease. So it's a rhetorical, just something to think
So no,
about.
it's a good question though. Did you take that into account in assessing your figures?
I don't. Look, this report took the input of many people. I don't have the fleet manager here to actually be able to answer that question.
But that's a point of note that both you and the Chief Executive will be looking at.
In fact, I had that conversation today with the new fleet manager in terms of potentially using getting in a resource to do a full data analytics on our fleet. Not necessarily to answer that question about whether to lease or own, but also to, well, on some of our fleet that we do own, what is the optimal replacement point? And I think, to be fair, in some cases we made a decision for budgetary purposes to extend the life out of the asset, but we don't take into account the renewal costs and maintenance costs of achieving that, and it's actually costing us more in the long run. So I've challenged the fleet manager today to look at an option to actually get an analysis in, and I might actually include that question in that analysis as well to get information. So it's a good question.
And often your operating lease is only for 100,000 Ks, and we all know that those cars are under new car warranty anyway, so there are no costs.
Yep.
All you have to do is oil and filter. So just another thought. And the other thing, I just think with the legal side, we spend a lot of money on legal, and I sometimes wonder if staff are blinded by winning once we start, and the costs become secondary, and whether there's somebody who can oversee what's going on and decide when to pull the pin, who's not blinded by the issues but looking in from the outside. And it's probably a job in your area, Richard, but just a...
Yeah, and that does happen, and I constantly challenge the team to consider the cost benefit of the actions, and we'll continue to do so, Councillor.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Don't council laws make that call?
Sometimes we do. They do come to us sometimes.
Some of this, and I think we need to be a bit more open about that and bring that to you earlier in the piece as well before we commit a significant amount of money as well, Councillor.
Better analysis, yep. Councillor Mallett, oh sorry, Councillor King, you finished?
Yeah.
Yep, Councillor Mallett, do you have a question?
And this one's totally serious. Did you consider swapping vehicles for cycles at all?
I'm not aware. I'm not sure if we did. We have a couple of electric bikes in our fleet. So
have you, Gary?
No, not at all.
No, we do have a number of electric bikes, 3. We do make available for staff to use when going around the city, if they choose to.
What's an electric bike look like?
It looks like a bike with a motor.
Bike with a little battery.
I met one on the lift a couple of weeks ago.
Self-driving bike.
Okay, so no other questions? So councillors, I was going to move the recommendation on page 294, but I'm going to add a B. And an updated report on the efficiency work identified in this report is presented in June 2016.
To council?
Yes, to council. Because there are a number of things that are going on in here, and I want an update on, have they been done? What else have you found?
Yep. So there would be another aspect.
Did you get that, Jude?
So just an FYI, behind this report is a detailed action plan that wasn't relevant to bring to council, but we are working through that, and there's various owners within the organisation. So that's a achievable recommendation.
Right, is that seconded by the Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Now, is there any discussion on this?
Yeah, I'll speak to this.
Just Just one question, Your Worship.
Sorry?
Just on page 298, point 61, you say in a general comment, spending in the area of travel is considered relatively light in these areas. Could you tell me what our annual domestic travel bill is?
Look, I'm grasping at my memory right now, but I think if I recall, and I'll need to confirm this for you, it was about $60,000 last financial year. And that was down considerably on the previous year.
That's for the whole organisation?
That's for the whole organisation.
So the whole Hamilton City Council organisation,
That's airfares, domestic airfares, sorry.
including councillors and the entire senior team, is $60,000 in domestic air travel.
Can we provide that to councillors and actually confirm the exact amount? Because I don't want to be quoted by, given the expression on said councillor's face, let me have an opportunity to confirm that action.
I'm just clarifying on that. We have a provider or something, don't we? Use a
Orbit travel.
Yes, Orbit travel. Okay, yes, Councillor King, I'll also speak to this, but you go.
Yeah, I just want to congratulate the CE and E.ON on this. I think this is a really hard area in any corporate or any local government. This is really close to people's pockets, often support services and almost the little perks, although they're not perks, but the little extras that make a job worth it, but they can often make a company actually uneconomical and not work in the real world by everybody just taking the company car home or not having a GPS and whipping up to Auckland and putting it on the card and just little things. And they're things they're hard. These are really hard things to address often because they are close to staff's heart. And this is actually not aimed at those staff who are the easy targets often in business down at the bottom, down at the lower earners. This actually affects the middle and higher earners. And I just want to say it's a hard matter. It's close to the till. It's a hard matter to address. It's easier just to leave these things alone, and they often are. And I think you're following through on what you said you would, Richard, when you got the job, and just generally keeping things tight. And that's the difference between an efficient organisation and an inefficient organisation. So well done, both of you. And I do believe it's a very hard job at times because you really are taking away those little things from people that they hold precious sometimes.
Make a couple of comments. I draw councillors' attention to page 295 and the net cost of support services. And you'll see that it's relatively static. And I think that speaks volumes because the reality is that every few months we are increasing the services that we deliver to the city by virtue of the fact that we're growing. And to be able to maintain, if you like, some sort of cap on this, although I appreciate it's not a cap, but I'm just using that word, is very, very difficult. And one of the things that has been highlighted in this report is when benchmarked against other councils and other large organisations, there's a fairly lean machine that is in this category. Now, I appreciate that this is a spotlight goes on this stuff because we all in this room and in this organisation want the ratepayers' money spent on the external facing stuff, the stuff that, you know, delivers the services to the city. But to enable us to do that, we do need to have a well-functioning backroom that actually has the right resourcing. So I think we do need to keep a close eye on this. What this report also highlights is that there are ways to do that drive efficiencies in the way we do things rather than the number of people. And you've highlighted, E.ON, joined up services with print and all these things. They sound small, as Councillor King said, but when you gather them all together, they can make quite a difference and enable us to continue to run a fairly lean machine in terms of people resources. But I am keen to continue to just keep a spotlight on this through this forum, because as I think, Richard, you implement more of this and look at some of these potential efficiency ways of operating, other things might surface that require a closer look. So yeah, well done, because we did ask the new Chief Executive to look at this, and it's been great that we've seen what's happening. And for me particularly, it was really useful to, in a very public way, benchmark how we operate against other councils and large organisations, because I think there has been a perception perhaps that, you know, there was some fat in it. Well, actually what this has demonstrated is there's no fat, folks. It's quite lean. And what we're now focusing on more and more is being more efficient in the things that we, you know, how we do it, and joined up more, and doing things in a more creative way. So thanks very much for the work. Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I think I don't disagree with your basic analysis, and I think it's around the issue of purchasing and just being more curious. I'm obviously seeing some evidence and some very positive work. As Councillor King says, how things are changing, particularly in terms of some of the so-called, you know, and the vehicle fleets, all of that sort of stuff, I think is acknowledged. I hope, because I sometimes hear some people say lean and mean. I think we're lean, but I don't want us to be mean. And I certainly, in terms of my experience on the 9th floor, where I have most interaction, I am incredibly impressed with the efficiency, effectiveness and intellectual calibre of the people who work up in the 9th floor, who, you know, the democracy team, trust me, they'd match any select committee office in Parliament, wherever. If I go down the floors, I don't want to make a long homily, but to me, you know, we've got some amazing people. I'm also aware that there's been stresses and strains, you know, because of the recent restructure. And, you know, I mean, that inevitably go with that. I respect that. So the only thing I would say as a member of the governance team is you know, looking for lean, but you know, just making sure that we still are, you know, stating the obvious, and I'm sure the CEO will be across this, that we're still a good place to work, and that people do go home and have another life, and then when they come back to work in the morning, they still want to be here. And I know sometimes that's not always happened, but yeah, I just made the point. But I do congratulate the team for the work you've done, and particularly those areas where there's been savings.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Your Worship, look, I fully support the initiative, and I think there's some good work to be done. Some good work has been done. I do look forward to hearing from the Chief Executive a more clear answer in regards to point 61. Yes, because in one statement it says the spending was deemed to be relatively light, training, conferences and travel, and when asked I was told the travel was approximately $60,000 from memory. If you then go down a few more lines, it says spending on training, travel and conferences for last year was 1.05 million. So, which equates to 1,100 per person. And then it goes on to break out the catering and stationery. So one assumes when we deem training, conferences and travel as light at $1 million, I'd like to get my head around that.
Yep.
And
the training, sorry, Councillor, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's all right.
I was going to say that the training's a significant portion of that. There's a significant amount of training required in this organisation for technical staff to maintain their standards for their qualifications, so that does make a portion, but I will provide you a full breakdown because I understand where you're going with that question.
Okay, so just on that point, if a member of staff joins the organisation as a chartered accountant or a chartered engineer, once they're within the organisation, we continue to keep the practising certificates, for a want of a better description, valid?
That's correct, and then also some practising certificates also require a certain number of professional training hours as well to maintain it as well, and as part of your employment agreement you have that contribution as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, I'm just asking if we could get a detailed report
absolutely.
on the travel, the training and the conferences, because that would be fascinating.
Can I maybe provide a little bit of clarity there? So when we, our account structure, the way it works is we but the training, travel and conferences, when we look at the benchmarking there, we spend about 1,100. The industry, central government spends about 1,300 a person. Training, travel to those venues are included in that cost. So if there's training involved if there's travel involved to get to the training, that's lumped in that 1.05. It is very easy for me to provide the breakout of just the basic travel component that we pay
And
for
I think
orbit.
that's what will be circulated for clarity, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, councillors, anything else? Yes, councillor Coulson?
Yes, I am pleased to see that the facts tell us that the council does run things pretty leanly, and it's not as frivolous and exorbitant as some people tend to point the finger or try and make a big deal out of. So I'm pleased to see that the reality has spoken. Having said that, though, I do think that there needs to be a balance between running a lean operation and cutting out the small things that do make a difference to staff and the environment that one is, well, presumably you, CEO, are trying to create. So I think that the balance is necessary. The other thing, while we are pointing out expenses that I've always thought was a little incongruous, was or is the catering for democracy. And while I see that there's a need and understand the rationale for catering for H3, I often wonder why councillors receive more than cups of tea and bickies. So, I know in other organisations I've worked in, I've never had meals provided. It was always been something that I've provided for myself. So, I mean, that's always been a mystery to me. I understood when I first became a councillor that meal allowances, etc., were a way to hold councillors together so that matters could be perhaps further discussed, but the reality that doesn't actually happen. So, I mean, that's just a small thing. But, yeah, otherwise, thanks for the report. Good report.
Okay,
Could I just ask for clarification? I understood that the Inland Revenue rules clearly state that if there's a board meeting that runs for more than 4 hours, it's standard practice that meals provided are accepted by the Inland Revenue as an expense.
It's deductible, yes.
And we don't get meals provided unless our meetings do go for more than 4 hours. I think, is that right, democracy? Thank you.
Oh, I thought we got lunches as well. So,
Only if the meeting goes all day. Please
Okay.
don't ask the
Thank
democracy
you.
manager to talk.
All right, so councillors, thanks very much. So just voting, I think we can do this on the voices. All those in favour? Any against? Gary, thanks very much, Eon, for your work.
Thanks, Eon.
Right, we're now moving into public excluded. I'll move public